Hi guys, I'm Janika Hanford with HandfordHacks, and today I'm doing a special episode on a question that one of my subscribers asked. They wanted to know a little bit about my background, how did I get started, and what are the steps, or at least some of the steps I've done to get to the point of investing. And so today I'm going to cover that. I want to start off by saying I came from humble beginnings. I definitely didn't come from wealth. I have worked really hard for everything that I have. And early on, especially during my college years and even right after my college years, I was not financially savvy. I wasn't money smart. I had 3 credit cards that was maxed out and already in collections when I graduated. I had student loans. I graduated from Clark Atlanta University and with a degree in computer information systems. And at that time, tuition was roughly $10,000 per year. And I didn't have a lot of scholarship when I went there. So most of it is what I had to pay back. I did have few Pell Grants and a few academic scholarships, but it really didn't put much of a dent in what I owed back. So when I graduated, I got my first job in IT. And so at that time, I was like, all right, let me start making my monthly payments towards my student loans. Let me kind of get with a collection company to consolidate those 3 credit cards that I had maxed out so that I can do a settlement and pay that money back now that I was working. And really, I ended up getting an apartment that was well beyond my means, and it wasn't smart at all. I ended up getting a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment when it was just me, and the rent alone was, I think it was like $1,100. And so because of how high that rent was, and based on what my salary or my take-home pay was, I essentially was living paycheck to paycheck. And that wasn't really a smart decision, but I didn't know any better at the time. I just was like, oh, let me have a 2-bedroom apartment. I have friends that come up and visit from Atlanta all the time. At least I have an extra bedroom. But in reality, I didn't even do anything with that extra bedroom. That extra bedroom had no furniture in it whatsoever. And it was a high-priced apartment for it just be me. And so a year and a half into my first job, I got laid off due to budget cuts. And again, I was living paycheck to paycheck. Luckily, when that happened, I had only 1 month left in my rental agreement. So it ended up working out where I ended up taking that last paycheck. Actually, they did a severance package. So I was able to take the severance package and pay that last month rent and kind of get groceries. And during that time, after I got let go, I ended up interviewing for another jobs, and I ended up getting another job, I want to say 2 to 3 weeks later. But in that moment of being let go and knowing that I was living paycheck to paycheck, it really was a defining moment for me. It changed my outlook and my perspective on just wanting to be financially savvy. And not only that, at the very least, my goal was to make sure that I could put money away so that I didn't have to worry about, how can I pay my rent when I lose a job or my car needs a new transmission. I wanted to make sure that I at least had that financial independence where I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck so that I could have money put away. And again, that was a defining moment for me. I don't think I would be where I am today, or at least not as far along as I am today, if it was not for that defining moment. I just knew that I never wanted to be in that situation again. And really, I just ended up educating myself on being more smart about my money and understanding how to make my money stretch longer and work for me, and what was the best way to do that. So again, I was making my monthly payments on my student loans. I had, at this point within that year, I had paid off the credit cards, the 3 credit cards that I own. I really wanted to work on my credit score and just really kind of establishing good credit and cleaning up, those settlements, because I knew it would take time for that to fall off. And I really assessed what I needed and what I didn't need. At that time, again, I was living beyond my means. it was things that I didn't need. I wasn't getting any use out of it, or it just wasn't as valuable to me, such as at one point in my life, I was buying all these expensive designer handbags when really I didn't need that. It didn't bring me happiness. It didn't bring me joy. It was just, oh, I like how this looks. Let me buy it. That point in my life definitely should not been a focus on living beyond my means or placing any value on materialistic things. I always like to tell younger generation that while you're young, you should really be taking advantage of being as frugal as possible so that you can save as much as you can. That is really the key way that have gotten me to where I am today, was being able to look at my expenses. I always say, look at your spending habits, but really not only looking at your spending habits, I was looking at all of my utilities, because once I cut out all the extra over the top things that I was paying for, I started assessing cable. Like, I really wasn't watching the movie channel. So it was like, why did I have all of these premium channels when I wasn't watching it? So I ended up calling the cable company, dropping the premium channels. And then I also threw out there that actually I'm gonna get rid of cable altogether. And the cable company ended up offering me a much lower rate. And so that mindset also made me wonder, well, could I call Duke Energy and get a lower rate? Is there a program that they have that can bring my monthly payments down? And then I found out that there's an energy efficient program where, like, especially it's based on seasons, and there are optimal times where you shouldn't be using electricity, and there's certain seasons where it's really, that program really works wonders, especially if you're not home during 8 to 5 where you wouldn't be at home anyway. Those rates are really cheap. So I ended up enrolling in an energy efficient program. And at the time, with the cable company, I had a home phone. I got rid of the home phone. I didn't need a home phone. I had a cell phone. So yeah, I really started assessing even just the key essentials. How can I bring those bills down lower? The other thing I ended up discovering and kind of applied it moving forward is that whenever I interview for a job and a company puts a job offer on the table, I never, ever, ever accept their first offer. What I've learned, and what there have been tons of studies to suggest, is that when companies give you a job offer, really that offer already has buffer in it for them to expect that you're going to counter offer for a higher rate. They have a buffer. A company is going to give you the lower offer because they want to make sure that at least they have wiggle room in the event that you want 10,000 more than what they're offering. So I always tell people, you need to negotiate your salary. I don't care what line of work. I don't care if you're an hourly worker or a salary worker. You should always negotiate and go for a higher salary than whatever they put on the table. So I wanted to make sure my income was going up and my expenses was going down. I ended up being a little bit more frugal. I used to go out to eat all the time. I ended up just buying groceries, cooking at home, and just really understanding my finances and just wanting to make sure that if any unexpected thing came up that cost money, that I had it and I wouldn't be compromising or having to make a choice between paying my rent or getting my car fixed and not having a way to get to work. So that was very key in understanding. And then from there, I've just really educated myself on reading finance books, listening to podcasts, and looking at different people's YouTube videos on how did they get to the point of where they're at. And I just applied that. And having that understanding has made me get to the point of where I can honestly say that my girls have generational wealth. My kids are financially set up where they won't have a worry in the world. I can honestly say that me and my husband have factored in what happens when we get older and we need to be put in a nursing home. What does that look like? Have we accounted for that in our investing, in our savings, in our multiple streams of income? We one, I'm very analytical. So I like to think of worst case scenario, even in my rental incomes and the properties I have. What happens if my tenants can't pay the rent, or we don't get new tenants in, and then we have all of these mortgages? I have built all of that in, and just being really aggressive with my investing and savings and multiple streams of income to allow me to really not be that concerned. I'm not concerned at all. And that's very important. Even at some point in my career, I ended up starting my own business that was geared towards developing websites. And I always look at people who have their own business or are their own entrepreneur. One thing I always tell people is that if you're going to be your own boss, I want to make sure that you actually are putting money aside and investing and making multiple streams of income. Because what's going to happen when you're 60 or 70 or 80 and your body starts to fail you and you physically can't provide that service or do that job? Then what? And I just don't believe that Social Security is going to be able to cover all of the things that you may have, such as vehicle insurance or your life insurance policy, or just your normal everyday spending habits. I want to make sure that all of that has been carefully and just really thought out and is in everyone's mindset. So definitely it's in my mindset. Hopefully I've given my viewers something to think about in their own financial independence. And everyone's goal can be totally different, and that's fine. Not everyone wants generational wealth. Not everyone wants to, invest or have multiple streams of income. And that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But what I am saying that you do is that you really take a look at your spending and what your income is, and that you at least are putting money away for just being able to have something in case something goes wrong, or there's an emergency, or maybe your child needs surgery that's not covered by insurance, or anything of those nature. You want to make sure that you're not in a situation where you're having to borrow money or take out some loan with a high interest rate. That to me is valuable information that ultimately took me time to learn. It didn't happen overnight. And as I started at the beginning of this, is that I definitely had maxed out credit cards and student loans, but based on how I can pretty much live way below my means has allowed me to really save and then take that savings and go into investing. Because really just storing your money and saving is just that. Like if you were to save $10,000 into saving, that's just $10,000. It's not going to multiply. The only way it's going to multiply is by you actually putting more money in that. But even then, when I look at investments into like the stock market or just having passive rental income, at least when I invest my money, if I put $10,000 into a mutual fund or a stock, at least over time, there's a long-term gain where that 10,000 can end up turning into 20,000, as opposed to you put 10,000 in savings, that's just going to stay 10,000. So over time, I've learned these lessons. This has been great and has greatly impacted my family. We have benefited from being able to have multiple streams of income, having investments. It's just setting my kids up, because the last thing I want them to do is that whenever it's my time to go, I don't want my kids to have to set up a GoFundMe account to pay for funeral expenses. That's just not going to happen. So I made sure that I have my life insurance policy that is outside of my company, only because, one, a lot of times, or at least in the mindset, I don't expect people to work at a company up until their death. And there's a lot of things that can occur between you working from a company until you ultimately leave this earth that I want to make sure is accounted for. What happens if me and my husband need to be in a nursing home? I want to make sure that all of that is taken into consideration. And that is why I invest. That is why I save. That is why I am frugal. That is why I look at my spending. That is why I'm always challenging what certain utility bills are and how this can be done more efficient or cheaper. Those are all the things I do now that I didn't do starting out. But like I said, getting laid off in that first job was a pivotal moment in my life that has gotten me to where I am today. And it has really paid off. And not only that, when I moved into the second apartment, I knew that I didn't want to be in that apartment long or at least for a long time, because I knew I wasn't building equity. And so after I left that apartment, I ended up getting a townhouse. And I knew that the townhouse was not going to be my forever home, only because I was single at the time. And I had always envisioned that I would find Mr. Right and eventually settle down and have kids. So even when I was shopping for a townhome or a home or condo to buy, I knew it needed to be in the right areas. I knew it needed to be in the right school districts, only because I wanted the property to grow appreciation. And I also wanted to make sure that it would be easy to rent out if I wanted to rent out. And so that's exactly what I did. I ended up getting a nice townhome that is now being rented out, and I have tenants, and is now great source of income, and the appreciation over time has grown in this area. So definitely a great buy. And then when I met my husband, we moved into our current house today, when I got pregnant and had Phoenix. So yeah, so those are all the pieces that have kind of led me up to where I am today and how I do so much investing now. And yeah, I hope these are great life lessons that I've given you. It really boils down to, what is your end game? Savings, making sure you take a look at your expenses. If your company offers 401 company matching, at the very minimum, everyone should always do your contributions to match the employer, what your employer is matching. Yeah, so you just definitely want to be planning for your future. And I hope this was helpful for the person that asked about how did I get to where I am today. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment or reach out to me directly. I definitely will give you any advice you're looking for. And I have definitely done a lot of research, and I'm hoping that this serves as cliff notes to aid in you getting to whatever your end game is. All right. Thanks for watching.
Don't forget to subscribe to HandfordHacks.